Furniture City, the biggest collection of New Zealand's finest.
To make it, it's thick and smooth. Yo, shake it easy and get into the groove. Yo, shake it to make it, grab a straw and sip it. Get back to that. Come on, get with it.
Big 4-hour videotapes, only $8. 3 hours, only $5.
This week in New Idea, the stars who are fighting for their...
Tonight, then, a tribute to terribly creative man, a man who couldn't stop designing things, a man who touched many people, a man who will be remembered for designing a revolutionary motorbike which took the world racing, or the racing world, by storm.
Nestled amongst the rolling hills of Christchurch, New Zealand, a black stone stands erect at the Waiamari Cemetery. A monument to a man who worked tirelessly to prove that innovation was still possible. Not with factories, not with fortune, but with hard work, determination, and borderline insanity. There beneath that marble slab lies a dreamer, an innovator, and a legend. One who made his mark in time, a point in history among those that race on two wheels, proving that all it takes is vision to forge something incredible. 30 years ago, a man named John took up his hammer, set his sights on the world's most prestigious motorcycle makers, and vowed to bring them to their knees.
They're on the run to the checkered flag.
He would be David, and with a tireless mind and meticulous hands, he would slay the Goliaths of the motorcycle industry. Today, his body rests quietly under the green grass of New Zealand, but his courageous spirit is immortal. It lives on in everyone who's looked at the creations of others and said, I can do better. This is the story of a motorcycle, a house, and some ornamental glass. Mostly, though, it's the story of the hands that crafted them. About the life and philosophy of a soft-spoken genius named John Britten. John Britten was a visionary, but he wasn't alone. His wild imagination was only made possible with the help of a big garage, a six-pack of beer, and a few friends. But for some problems, you need more help than that. And that's where today's sponsor, BetterHelp, comes in. And look, I know, you're all big tough car guys out there thinking, I don't need help with anything, but I'm about to tell you why you just might be wrong. These are 3 signs that car guys might want to give BetterHelp a try. Number 1, are you always mad at traffic? First off, you are traffic, so what are you complaining about? And second of all, anger behind the wheel is a good sign that you have a lot of stress and anxiety. So if the horn in your car is worn out from smashing it so hard, you might want to consider seeking answers and enjoying driving and the rest of your life. Number 2, do you just have to drive the most attention-getting car? I know I do. Well, that's actually a pretty good indicator that you and I might have histrionic personality disorder, the need for constant attention and applause, which is, let's all be honest, annoying. So spend less time waxing your gaudy 350Z and spend more time waxing your mind. And number 3, you drive a German luxury car. Seriously, a study conducted in the UK found that BMW and Audi drivers score abnormally high on the psychopathy test, meaning that if you chose a swanky German car as your daily driver, first of all, use your damn turn signals. And second of all, you probably need some help. And thankfully, my friends at BetterHelp are here to help you. That is, if you visit betterhelp.com/squid. Look, if I'm being honest, I've already been using BetterHelp myself, and it's already done wonders for my self-esteem, getting my life and work balance figured out so that I can put out more videos, and of course, dealing with the crippling depression of the comments. Yes, I know I mispronounce everything. I'm trying. Strassenversion. You idiot. No, seriously, I have struggled my entire life with anxiety and depression, and I personally love BetterHelp. And it was super easy. I just filled out a quick questionnaire, set some goals, and got matched with a licensed therapist within 48 hours. I set up therapy sessions from my couch, from my bed, or even my garage. I am just one of over 4 million people who have joined BetterHelp and improved my life. If you think that you would benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/squid. Even just clicking the link helps support this channel, and we'll give you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can see if therapy helps you the way it has me. And now, back to the story. Our story begins where it ends, in Christchurch, New Zealand. There, in 1950, Bruce and Ruby Britten were blessed with the birth of twins. The two were born a day apart. John, who would live a lifetime of needing to cross the finish line first, would enter the world a day before his sister. Now, the road to greatness is rarely well paved, and John's path in life would be wrought with obstacles, even from a young age. School was where his troubles began. His teachers would complain of his short attention span, and he struggled in everyday classes. John had suffered with dyslexia, and reading was a chore. The classroom became a place where he never felt comfortable. At an early age, John would feel lost in this world. His future a blurry, dark haze. That is, until he found his true calling in his father's workshop. There, the intricate operations of machinery would speak to him. His attention would focus, and he could see a vision. A sight that challenged him to break those machines apart and build them back better than they were before. John got his start tinkering at age 6 with his pedal cart that his parents gave him, and by age 11 he had strapped an engine to it. Throughout his youth, John and his best friend Bruce would find any engine they could get their hands on, strip it apart, rebuild it, and turn his neighborhood into a racetrack. The fire of engineering began to burn in his heart, and became a raging inferno when he came across some junk on the side of the road.
This is Radio Salt Lake City, Utah, USA. The next song is for the speed freaks out at the Bonneville Salt Flats. This week, the world's fastest machinery gets it together on the salt to attempt to better the land speed record. The oldest competitor is 73-year-old Bert Munro, and he's coming 8,000 miles from New Zealand to run his 1920 Indian motorcycle. And Bert has owned the bike since it was new.
For such a tiny piece of land, New Zealand has created an outsized share of motoring legends. Denny Hume, Chris Amon, and of course, Bruce McLaren. In 1899, a boy named Bert Munro began his journey into the halls of Kiwi racing history. Adrenaline-fueled Bert, like alcohol at a frat party. As a young boy, he raced horses on his parents' farm. To escape the monotony of farm life, he signed up to be part of the brutal battles of World War I, just because he thought it would be fun. When the end of the war came about, his desire for dancing with death was not satiated. So he bought a motorcycle and became a speedway racer. World War II reared its ugly head, and Bert worked at home to keep the family business alive rather than duking it out with the Axis forces. But after 2 world wars, Munro was looking for a new high. He fired up his old speedway bike, a 1926 Indian Scout, and rode it along the beautiful beaches, eating up the sand, soaking up the sun, and bored out of his mind. So he pushed the Indian faster and faster atop the white sand beaches, and began to wonder, how fast could it really go? This new thought invaded his brain, filling him with renewed fervor. During the day, as a motorcycle mechanic, he began to tinker. He stayed up late into the night, designing new components. He would cast parts out of old tin cans melted down, using makeshift tools to guess tolerances. His micrometer was made of old wheel spokes. His grinder was hand-cranked. and there was no problem he couldn't overcome with a big scoop of elbow grease. For years, he hacked, yelled, and invented. That Indian Scout gained 350 cubic centimeters of displacement, 2 more chains, and a home-built aerodynamic shell, all without real testing. There was no NASA wind tunnel in his garage, or a fancy engineering degree to back up his musings. Yet, at the Bonneville Salt Flats in 1962, that 1920s motorcycle went nearly 180 miles per hour. Unofficially, in 1967, when Bert was nearing 70 years old, the bike went over 200. Over 9 visits to Bonneville, Bert set 3 speed records. His 1967 record of 183 miles per hour stands to this day as the fastest ever motorcycle under 1,000 cc's. John Britten had been following the saga of his fellow New Zealand speed freak for a while when he found that twisted pile of metal in the ditch. It was a pivotal moment, because that hunk of junk was a 1927 Indian Scout, just like his hero who rode on the white sands. John saw through the hopeless, torn-down wreck, envisioned its potential, and set about realizing it. Britten spent years restoring that old Indian motorcycle, reviving it from the dead, breathing life back into it, and rather than doing any homework, improving it night after night in his father's workshop. And that was to be the rhythm of John's life. Find something that inspires him, and fuck with it until he's pushed it to the absolute limit, and sometimes beyond it.
I think that has something to do with the Kiwi attitude of you can do anything, and you can do it in your backyard, and I think that's a really special mentality and something that we ought to treasure in ourselves.
The method may look simple, the technology is anything but.
The only place more familiar to John Britten than his workshop was the hospital. His achievements on the racetrack were matched only by his checklist of broken bones and scars. From a hang gliding accident to sinking a jet boat, John spent a large portion of his life in the emergency room. And thankfully so, because that is where he met his wife. At that time, John had been living out of a roaming house, which was basically a mobile home built on the back of a 1920s truck frame. John had crafted every single part of it by hand, but it was no place to raise a family. So John went about acquiring an old Victorian stable. Some may have seen it as a warehouse for smelly animals. John saw within it what he saw in everything: potential. Over time, John designed, improved, and hand-built every part of his home out of recycled materials. With his maniacal dedication, John had built him and his family a palace. Because to him, that was just the thing to do. If he wanted something, he just built it. You want a nice house? You grab a hammer. You want a fast ride? You grab a wrench. Somewhere between restoring a 1968 Mercedes and putting the finishing touches on his house, he developed a reputation of being the life of every party. He and his friends would stay up late into the night drinking and turning wrenches, then scurry away to their day jobs like roaches when the morning light filtered in. The projects became too numerous to list. His home surrounded by fast machines with 2 wheels. But unlike most weekend mechanics with far too many dreams, John would actually finish his. And then he'd race them. One day, while carving the curves of his local racetrack in a stripped-down Ducati, John was struck with an idea. Why am I restoring these motorcycles, trying to make them fit my vision by force? Why don't I just build my own motorcycle? And when John had an idea, be it good or bad, he acted upon it.
It probably helps, but you don't have to be an enthusiast to recognize or rather not recognise, Britain's ingenuity?
Where did the radiator go, mate?
That's a very good question.
Is it?
Yeah.
John didn't need to conform to any rules. Ducati had to make Ducatis, and the bikes that Ducati would make would have to fit Ducati parts, look like a Ducati, and have the essence of an Italian motorcycle. But if John were to build a motorcycle from the ground up, he wouldn't need any of that. In the 1980s, most V-twin motorcycles were not liquid-cooled. Most bikes had very little in the way of aerodynamics. Conventional motorcycle design told you to build a frame and attach all of the parts to the frame. John, of course, didn't know or didn't care about any of that. He and his team were a bunch of party animals in a shed. There wasn't a corporate industrial designer among them. And so, nothing about the creation of his bike would be normal. After all, John's team's R&D was done between skiing trips on the weekends. The first mock-up of the body was made of aluminum scrap and hot glue, and was completed at 1 a.m. And of course, the first test ride ended in disaster, but nothing would slow down John and his team. So they toiled on and went about breaking paradigm after paradigm. No one at the time made a high-revving, liquid-cooled V-twin. So John made his own by casting aluminum parts in the kiln he used to make lamps.
Excuse me. Get some more water from the swimming pool.
No one was making aerodynamic fairings for motorcycles. So John just made his own out of carbon fiber. This was the 80s, mind you, and carbon fiber was supposed to be reserved for Formula One teams, not weirdos in converted horse stables. Instead of conventional forks, John invented double wishbone front suspension for a motorcycle.
Mechanic's dream, that's what it is.
And since the carbon fiber he used was so incredibly strong, his motorcycle didn't even need a frame. You could use the aluminum engine and the carbon bits to hold the entire thing together. Everything on the bike was unique and custom fabricated, including the intricate intestine-like pipes that made up the exhaust. Complex in its design in order to reduce aerodynamic drag and avoid the radiator, which was mounted under the rider's seat. All of these parts came together to create an inspiring work of two-wheeled art, something that the motorcycle world had never seen before. And it was called the Britten V1000.
Looking more like the love child of two Klingon space cadets caught in a psychedelic 60s time warp, this radical concept wants for nothing.
It's 1991. Outside of Daytona International Raceway, trucks are emblazoned with words like Ducati and Harley-Davidson. Massive rolling workshops, full of parts and mechanics supporting the world's greatest motorcycles. And there, between them, is a ratty old U-Haul trailer carrying a bike designed in a shed, shipped across the ocean in crates, and reassembled on site. There are no extra parts and no backup plan.
Arriving at Daytona with the big bike manufacturers, we kind of felt small.
And yet, John pushes his machine out of the trailer and stands proud next to his creation, his smile glowing.
That is the most awesome motorcycle here in Daytona. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, the safety and tech inspectors were not moved by his pearly whites. The motorcycle would fail inspection due to a missing exhaust silencer. But John Britten, being John Britten, didn't even shed a tear.
It's good not to panic, but to be resourceful.
He and his crew cobbled together a new one out of used beer cans. And with that, the V1000 would pass inspection, roar to life, pull out onto the grid, and break down. Yes, the V1000 was not an overnight success. John Britten was after Ducati, the king of motorcycle racing. And like Omar Little said, you come at the king, you best not miss. Sadly, John and the V1000 would miss the king again and again. John's team's collective hearts sank. They wondered, was this a mistake? We're just a bunch of nobodies from a tiny island with no formal training. What are we doing trying to take on mega corporations and professional mechanics? Is our dream destined to fail?
It was very unfortunate, but we were trying things that were just so avant-garde, so untried and so brave at the time.
Thankfully, though, the Britten V1000 would be saved by an unlikely ally: the press. Because who doesn't love a good underdog story? Thanks to John's charming smile and optimistic attitude, at every race where V-twins gathered, reporters would wander around looking for the rising star from New Zealand. All of them eager to watch David return to the track with his sling and be the ones to finally report that he had felled Goliath. Spurred on by the encouragement from the magazines, John returned in 1992 with not one, but 2 whole motorcycles. A second bike was thrown together out of miscasts and spare parts. And it was this reject of rejects that captured the hearts of more than just the press. It caused companies like Honda to turn around and pay attention. During the race, Andrew Stroud sat atop the bike made from spare parts, and quickly pulled ahead of the pack. Every time some upstart on a Ducati would try to overtake him, Stroud would pull the front end off the ground and wheelie away in a cloud of mockery. Now, unfortunately, this still was a bike built from spare parts, and it was basically destined to fail. Despite its strong showing during the race, it too would break down and fail to finish. But it mattered not. That image of a nobody riding an unmarked motorcycle, showing off while taking on the best riders in the world, was now burned in everyone's mind. Sure, it wasn't a win, but it was a wild success. And with the scent of victory looming in the air, John officially formed the Britten Motorcycle Company. With the press on their side, and a name emblazoned across their machines, the V1000 began to win races. And it would never stop.
For a year, they've kept a dream alive and confidently come halfway around the world to win. Yet just the same, no one can quite believe it as John's homemade bike runs for lap after lap with the leading factory Ducati.
John Britten's V1000 became the first New Zealand-built bike to win in the Formula One of motorcycles. John's team would take home a title in the New Zealand Grand Prix. A V1000 would have the fastest top speed at Isle of Man. It earned the land speed record for a motorcycle under 1,000 cc's. First and second place at the Superbike Nationals. And finally, in 1994, John and the V1000, now properly sorted, would return to Daytona and take home the title at the Battle of the Twins, the race that started it all. There they would stand at the podium, their bike now clad in the iconic pink and blue livery that represented New Zealand. John had finally done it. After breaking every rule, spending 1,000 sleepless nights, and witnessing countless defeats, his spirit and his drive and his engineering prowess persevered. And his crowning achievement, the Britten V1000, stood atop its class. That young boy who struggled in school and who would never amount to anything had created the template for speed in the mid-90s. Motoring giants like Ducati and Indian, companies that John had looked up to standing in their shadows, were now having to drag themselves back to the lab to figure out just how some boy from New Zealand whooped their asses.
But it was an amazing thing to be part of, really. Out of everything I've done in racing, the Britten's the one that kind of stands the test of time, and it's a legendary machine. not only in New Zealand, it's getting more and more worldwide recognition all the time.
Back home in New Zealand, orders quickly began to pile up for the Britten V1000, and John became somewhat of a local celebrity, poised to finally take his place among the great designers of speed. John, being John, used his new success to help others. He would work with the mayor, build apartments, and always find time to teach his children how to carry on the legacy of innovation. Topping it all off, in 1995, a Britten V1000, piloted by the now legendary Stroud, conquered Bears, the British, European, and American racing circuit. Against all odds, David stood triumphant with his pink and blue sling.
John Britten is such a remarkable chap. I mean, you have to look at the bike and see that the whole machine has innovations from front to back. I've been a motorcyclist all my life, and I have to say I really admire what John Britten's done.
And what he has done is design a bike to beat the world. He's done it in one of the world's most remote locations. And most importantly, he's decided to change the very way that bikes are built. But why would anyone want to make life so difficult?
I suppose for the satisfaction, the more difficult something is, the more satisfaction you get out of it if you get a good result.
Sadly, though, we all know how this story ends. Months after Andrew Stroud's milestone achievement of winning Bears, he would be standing at an altar in Christchurch, New Zealand, reading from Corinthians to a crowd of 1,000 souls, all of them mourning the loss of New Zealand's pride. John Britten had succumbed to cancer. The man who built not only a fantastic bike, but a strong group of friends, a marvelous home, and most importantly, a family. John's life was far too short, but it was one well lived. Racing boats, crashing aircraft, skiing the highest peaks, and restoring one-of-a-kind vehicles. The soul that went to rest that day was a dreamer, a father, and a friend to every person he knew.
Masterpiece of artwork, that bike.
History, of course, will remember the Britten V1000, his most prolific creation. With its out-of-the-box design and wildly powerful engine, the V1000 shook the motorcycle royalty to their cores. It was a wild creation, the likes that we will likely never see again. But it was only so due to the man that built it with his frenzied hands. It was only so capable thanks to the team of friends he was able to bring together. And its trophies were only earned by the brave few who believed in John's vision enough to ride it. John was a man who challenged everything. He could design everything differently, and he could build it better. In his short life, John Britten would prove that a devoted few could build something from the ground up on a tight budget and take down the likes of Ducati and Honda. He was living proof that a young boy that struggled to read and get through school could still grow up to be the smartest and most sharp-minded individual on a racetrack. That with enough passion and enough grit, we humans are all capable of achieving anything we set our minds to do. On that solemn day in 1995, New Zealand and the motoring world as a whole mourned the loss of John Britten, never getting to know what he could have done with more time. But many that knew him rested easy knowing that when he arrived in heaven, he would smile, squint his eyes, and set about redesigning it.
He was a man of great feeling, and he loved people, and he was really a real inspiration to all of us.
Well, it's 27 minutes to midnight, and this is South Pacific Television. Television 2, a service of the Broadcasting Corporation of New Zealand. On behalf of all the staff, this is Ross Goodwin wishing you a very good night.